I'm Cayden, Senior Solutions Engineer at Openprise. And what Openprise is really is a RevOps data quality platform. We help with likes of MAP systems like Marketo, Salesforce, cleaning that data, deduping it, enriching it, matching and routing. The system can do so many things. We're going to see a great example of that today with our form fill demonstration, which I have queued up to show everyone. This is just a quick overview of the demonstration flow so everybody can follow along. And really, in this form fill demonstration, we're going to start by ingesting the data in a form that's based in Marketo. Ingesting that data, doing some validation, cleansing and inferring. We're going to see some common data errors that come through that we're going to be able to address. And then we're going to have a dedupe step. We're going to make sure that we're not creating any duplicate records before we actually enrich. This is a really important step for us. When we talk about multi-vendor enrichment, that's another thing that Openprise is really good at doing, and we'll see an example of that. And then once those enriched values have come back, we've got all of the data that we need to make that record actionable. That's where we can do steps like matching, segmentation, scoring, routing. We'll see all of that take place in Salesforce. So this will be staged in a sandbox of Salesforce. We'll see all of those results. And then finally, we'll jump into the back end of Openprise to see how this entire process was automated and orchestrated. All right, so without further ado, we'll get off the slide and go straight into the form. And like I said before, this is the Marketo hosted form that we'll be submitting this individual through. And Openprise is actually going to intercept this information, act as that data firewall between the information coming in from the form and then that final output into Salesforce. So we can see first name, last name of this individual is not capitalized. We're going to take care of both of those. I've got a business email that's ending in a .con, not a .com. We're going to take care of that. And then I've got a company name, ATT. We know that should be AT&T. And once we take care of this email, we're going to be able to not only enrich that record, but match it to the correct account. So we'll see both of those occur. Let me go ahead and submit this. And then we'll get on over to that sandbox of Salesforce I have up to see the final result, all of those data quality issues taken care of. So locating Christine's record here, under details, the first things I'll notice is the first and last name have been capitalized. The email's ending in a .com, not a .con. And after we fix this email address, we were actually able to send it out to our data providers to return back a title of digital marketing director. And then based on that title, that segmentation step that we saw in that process flow slide, we've been able to segment that job function as marketing, department of corporate marketing, job level of director, and then buyer persona as decision maker. And also tag this lead source from that web form that came in. And then based on that buyer persona decision maker, we've gone ahead and graded this contact in A. And that's just our alphabetical grading. We can support numerical scoring of records too. So that could be 0 to 100 based on a bunch of different first party data points, maybe some marketing data points as well. We also support those scoring numerically as well. But also just a quick mention, this buyer persona decision maker, totally optional and customizable, right? Managers could be decision makers, right? You could put that in all of the logic to make this buyer persona specific to your business and your business rules. But we've also received back a phone number, which we didn't have before. And we'll notice that phone number has got that leading +1. So one of the many things that happens when you enrich with multiple vendors is you get values back in a variety of different formats. What's important to us at Openprise is what the client is expecting that final format to be in their core system. And in this case, it should be that phone number with that international dialing code. So we've got an entire task template just for this specific operation. Also think about address information that might come back. The state might be California. You might want CA, right? We can always orchestrate and change that data, make sure it's in the correct final standardized format that you're expecting in your core system before we send it out. All right. And one more thing, you might have noticed this when I first opened this record under the related tab, I have actually sent this record into an active campaign for grade A ICP contacts. So this does one of two things. It shows you some of those routing capabilities from the Openprise side. And it also proves that Openprise isn't limited to leads, accounts, and contacts. We like to say, if you can write something down on a piece of paper, we can automate it. In this case, we're automating against the campaign member object. We've routed opportunities before. anything that the user, the integration user can see, has the permission to read and write to, we can build automation against. A lot of our out-of-the-box solutions, yes, are built around leads, accounts, and contacts, but some of our best customizable solutions come from our clients asking, can you automate this? Can you look at the invoice object and pull that against anything? Like, yes, we can. If you've got access to view or see that, we can build automation against it, is like what we like to say when it comes to that point. That is, the world is your oyster with Openprise. The customizability and scale is all there, and we'll see examples of that. Let me pop back over to the details though. Before we get into the Openprise backend, I want to show you some of the things that have gotten enriched on the account. Under details here, if I go to the details, we can see a list of a couple numbers here. So these are the DUNS numbers from D&B. It's one of our premier providers in our account waterfall. They actually sit first, so it goes to them first. And they return numbers like this. So D&B's DUNS numbers. This helps us to establish hierarchies within your Salesforce instance, if you'd like that. Also, they've returned some additional information in industry, sub-industry, the annual revenue, employees, all those basic firmographics you would expect from a provider that is providing account information. So we've got all of that as well. And then based on that information all matching up to our ICP, we've gone ahead and graded the account in A. And once again, we can support numerical scoring of accounts if that's the way that you and your company want to do it as well. In this example, those just kept to those alphabetical grades of an A. And that's all the final outputs I have to show you guys. Next, we'll be jumping into the back end of Openprise to really see how is this automated all under one roof. And the first thing that we'll start by doing is looking at the bot view. Now, the bot view is our 30,000 foot view. The way to think about the architecture in Openprise is bots contain jobs, contain tasks. Right now, we're at the bot view. We're seeing all the individual jobs right here that are contained within this bot. And this bot is set to fire those in a sequential manner. The next view that we'll see is actually the job view, one level down, and I'll be able to show you some of the tasks. But based on this bot view, right, I can see the job names here. Number 1, clean and dedupe. Number 2, enrich. Number 3, match contacts. 4, match accounts, score and route. And then finally, update Salesforce. It's important to stop here and say this update Salesforce is a completely optional step. The architecture of Openprise, we're actually not a plugin to Salesforce. We sit completely outside of your core systems, and we bring data in and send data back. So being that platform that sits outside of your core systems, you can actually create entire workflows utilizing production data and not affect production data until you're ready to do so. It's a way to leverage Openprise as a true sandbox or an extension, another sandbox, a safe space for you to workbench ideas using that production data. You can, of course, connect Openprise to a sandbox instance of Salesforce if you'd like, but Openprise in its essence works as a sandbox itself and doesn't overwrite data until you're ready to add that sort of step. Always like to stop and call that out. The other things that we'll notice about this bot is it's got API here in the upper tag. This web form API bot, it's triggered by that API of information entering that form fill. You can set bots to run up on a recurring manner, daily, weekly, hourly, up to every 5 minutes, or you can set them up to run manually as well. So a few different ways that bots can be triggered and kicked off to run in the system. And that really covers everything with bots from a high level. Next, we'll go and see from the jobs view what these individual jobs look like. And I'm there now. So that first one, cleaning and dedupe, if I click here to open this job, I can see there are several tasks here just to clean and standardize and dedupe that data. Here at Openprise, it's every data quality problem that we encounter. It usually traces back to these basic foundations of data quality. So if you're not doing these things today, of course, this is where best practice we want to start by cleansing the email, validating things, fixing capitalizations, normalizing country names, phone numbers, you name it, right? There's plenty of steps in task-based automation here to achieve and standardize data before we take a step, dedupe or even enrich. We want to make sure that we've got everything as put together as we can before taking steps like that. And then once we actually have been able to dedupe, merge things, that's where a step like enrichment can come in, right? So we understand we're not enriching any duplicates. And part of the enrichment flow to put a face to a name when we talk about a multi-vendor approach, a multi-vendor waterfall, this is really what it looks like, right? So we might And you might validate the email addresses with Bright Verify before. And if we get a valid tag back, we'll send it to that first vendor, in this case, Cognizant. And then as we get the data back, if there are still fields, what we like to call minimum fields that have not been filled in, think title, phone number for like person records, we're still missing that after the first enrichment vendor, we'll go to the next one, and so on and so forth until the minimum field strategy is fulfilled and we've got an actionable record. And that is, it doesn't matter if it goes to one or all 5 of the vendors, it's 1 credit through Openprise for that multi-vendor enrichment. And once we're able to get that data set back, we've got a fully enriched record. That's where we can do the other things like matching contacts, matching accounts, scoring, and routing. And you'll notice what I'm showing here, just in these pretty much 5 steps, you might use 5 different tools today to accomplish all of this. The beauty of Openprise is also a consolidation lens. Getting things under one roof not only saves on cost, but it also can help you to understand if things break, where things are breaking along in your process. You don't have to check multiple systems that you're maybe duct taping together to get today to make a point solution work past its prime. And that's really where Openprise can come in. Really, our ICP is those folks that have gotten to use point solutions and run out of rope. That is all I've got to show today. With 5 minutes left, I'll come back in for some questions from the chat. And
yeah, good job, Cayden. Good job. So I did see one question. Anybody, if you have a question, go ahead and put in the Q&A tab. That's the easiest way for me to field these questions. Let's go ahead and bring up that first one. How is Openprise different from other data normalizing / cleansing tools like RingLead, ZoomInfo OperationsOS?
Yeah, I would say it's the ability to just go above and beyond what those systems are doing today. Usually what we find is clients will come to us using those systems and say, hey, I can't customize this one thing, or I need to, like I said before, include more than just lead accounts contacts. I need to understand which accounts have open invoices to understand which is the golden winning record in my dedupe logic, right? Those are the things that Openprise does at scale, those really customizable, in-depth approaches. Usually it's the fact that they run out of rope. They're not able to achieve that with those systems. And they come to us to say, you know, what can Openprise do to help? And it's usually the case that we're able to prove that out and then start a successful partnership from there.
Cayden, what do you see as like the burning problem? I know you take many calls. So what's the burning problem that you see almost every single day?
Wow. It's data quality, right? But I always ask people what that means to them first and foremost, because someone might come to me and they're way up at the strategic level, right? Their boss is asking them for better attribution models. And I'm like, okay, how many duplicates do you have in your system? Because if you've got 5 Caydens in your system, it's going to be really hard to attribute that person at the end of the day if they end up buying the software, right? Or the product that you sell. So understanding, tracing these things back to those data foundations. Once again, is the data standardized? Are there a lot of duplicates? Is data actionable? Are there a lot of missing holes in the data, right? Where it needs to be enriched? Tracing back to a lot of those things, we'll find a lot of the data issues start from those foundations and kind of work backwards from the problem. So when I say data quality, it can mean 2 or 3 of them. It can mean all those things. It could be just one of them, right? But I always like to ask that question. As soon as I get a really downstream request like attribution or scoring, I'm like, okay, what about these things? Are these things taken care of?
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet data quality is an issue for every single company, and for every single company, it means something completely different. It's never good. And it's probably because of sales reps like myself that don't know how to update the CRM or put in bad stuff or whatever it is. Awesome. I think that's all the questions we have, at least as of right now. Sometimes questions trickle in afterwards. I'll send those over to you after the call if anybody does have another question about Openprise. But Cayden, thank you so much. That was a really well done demo.